power on.
Accessing historical database. Year 2020. The tech giants become aware of the greatest threat to their corporatist domination. An obscure science and tech podcast becomes a major factor in a peaceful open source revolt against the military Silicon Valley industrial complex. The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
Woo! You know, I heard a great joke the other day. So, a Pakmara and a Vorlan walk into a bar. No, never mind. That's not a real joke, but you're just looking at me.
Vorlons don't drink. They're not even corporeal.
Are they even walking?
It looks like they're floating.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away. Anyway. Woo! Well, anyway, of course, you just realized that you are listening to Sovryn Tech, and we've got all kinds of science and tech news to get into, and I am not alone. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, is not here on his lonesome. He is here with the astonishing, the incomparable Ellen Sovryn herself. And, of course, welcome to the show once again.
Thank you for having me on again so soon, actually.
Yeah, it's almost been like every other episode you've been on. I don't mind that pace. I don't know how you feel about it.
I like it. Let's keep it up.
I know you're a very busy gal, but I
like life in the fast lane.
Life in the fast lane. All right.
Let's keep this fast pace going.
Yeah. Well, we did just get done watching Babylon 5. You know, we might talk a little bit about that later on because I want to hear where you're at. We just watched interludes and examinations, and anybody that knows what's going on there. But we'll save that for later. Like I said, we got lots of science and tech news to get into. But I know you have a very busy schedule. In fact, so it's amazing that you're on. And actually, I just recorded. You were sitting nearby. In fact, you heard there was a woo from Ellen in that episode. I just recorded a guide to retro gaming on the PlayStation 2. Burn all of your own games for free. You never have to buy another game again. And look, folks, I mean, come on. It's not like Sony's making money off of those discs anymore. But on that, I actually hinted at, it's like, well, maybe we'll have Ellen on the next episode. And here you are.
Yeah, in a bizarre twist of events, I agreed.
Yeah. You know, I want to talk about, again, we've got some tech news really to open this up with. Then we got some really interesting stories that you've discovered, as you do. But why don't we open this up with what, again, has become tradition whenever you're on the show, which is, let's talk about what we're reading. Do you want to start this one off, or do you want me to start off this time?
Well, it's going to be more of a discussion about what you're reading, because I think you're reading enough for the both of us. Right now,
that happens.
I'm just reading my textbook.
Well, what are you reading?
It's called Introduction to Chemical Engineering Thermodynamics by Smith Van Nessen Abbott.
What are you, some kind of scientist?
Almost. Just give me a few more months.
Just a few more months, and then you're gold.
Yeah, and then I'll have the certificate to prove it. I mean, I already have one, but I'm getting a second one, so...
okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the book. What's the score here? I mean, thermodynamics. I mean, we get that, but go for it.
I don't think I can condense a 3-month course down to like a 30-second description.
What's in your way? Entropy?
Entropy is the way. It's times 0.
Ooh, there we go. Yeah, you know, I mean, actually, your walls are like in our bedroom, downstairs. there's just, these kinds of textbooks all over the place, all different editions. Like, you're the kind of person, and I love this. You're the kind of person that, like, I guess this happens at universities. I don't spend much time at them, so I don't exactly know, but they'll have free books out, right? For you to pick up. Does this happen?
On occasion, yeah.
On occasion.
Sometimes, somebody's cleaning out their office and they've got an entire bookcase of books that they've never used except to, look good and make
Right.
it look like they're being productive while they're in there.
Right. And so usually that happens, and then we end up, for some reason, having to buy a new bookcase because
Yeah, it's so weird. I'll I'll go to the university with nearly an empty backpack, and I'll come home with it weighing 40 pounds because I brought every free book that I was interested in. And I just buy them online sometimes too. Like, I'll go searching for textbooks for things that I'm not even majoring in, but I just want to know.
Oh, it's amazing, some of the books I see that arrive in the mail. What do you use? You use Abe Books? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Tell me about this.
I really love Abe Books. And this is
ABE.
Yes.
B as in Brian. Right. Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
It's a used book website, but it seems to have just about everything, and it really low prices too. Like, I get some of my used textbooks for like $2 or $3.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. And I've seen some of, what is that DK book that you got about animals? You got a couple of them.
Oh, I got this. So there's a beautiful print edition that the Smithsonian did of, it's just called Animal. And it's essentially a guide to every major family of animals in the world. And it's got these amazing photographs, and there's little illustrations, and they have, it's like one of those books that you used to love reading as a kid that has like 5 different snippet cutout paragraphs on every page.
Yeah. Where
it's like talking about classification, and then like this new thing that they discovered recently, and a blurb about preserving the ecosystem. It's really fun to read because there's so much eye candy on every page.
Now, what was the year? What, because you got 2 copies. I know you did the great honor of perhaps sharing one with somebody, but what were the years on these?
So the first one that I got, I believe, was like 2003 to 2005, and the second one was printed closer to 2011. And I have to say, the older one from 2003 was much better quality print than the newer one.
The colors were richer, right?
Yeah, the ink was, it was so rich in color, and the pages were actually really thick and kind of like plasticky. They were very firm. And even the text itself was written in a font that I like, where it uses the serif. And the newer one was using sans serif. And I was looking at them and comparing them, and I was like, why do I like this one better than the other one? And it got us talking about fonts.
Yeah, we ended up having like a 2-hour conversation about fonts. Serif is a funny thing. I mean, it's a great thing. I love serif. I mean, one of the things I love like about my Kindle is it's a Kindle Oasis, is that you can choose the different fonts. And I always choose a font with serif, because serif is basically that little line at the bottom of a letter, of a character,
or sometimes at the top too.
Or sometimes at the top, yeah. And the concept is that it keeps your line of sight going in the direction, to the next word, to the next letter, to the next word, and so on, right?
Yeah, it makes the text look very linear.
Right. It's to help you read it, help with the information flow, really. I could see where maybe it causes issues with speed reading, but ultimately I think speed reading's bullshit anyway, as far as like, with your eyes. I mean, with your ears, that's a different story, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I've heard people say that you can absorb just as much speed reading as you can reading at regular speed, and I don't think that's true. I mean, to really process something, I think you need to read every word and like comprehend what's happening and how they are connecting in the sentence.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit. I know the tricks. I know people talk about there's different tricks. I mean, the main thing that they say to read faster, I wouldn't call it speed reading. I mean, ultimately, I don't even think speed reading really exists. Not where you take in the complete text, because you see, you didn't think you'd have books to talk about during the Sovryn Tech Book Club, but here we are. But like the trick to speed read is to read down the middle. That's that's the argument of how you speed read something. But then you really don't get everything. And the idea is you just get the essential information. Now, a way you can increase your speed in reading is to get rid of the voice in your head, right? Like to, you know, because a lot of, and I do this, when you're reading a book with your eyes, when you're reading a book, you know, like you're reading it in your head and you're hearing it in your head.
Right.
If you can get rid of that, and there's little tricks that you can do to do that, you know, you can use like a pointer or things like this. That is a way to increase the speed with which you read. That does not equate to what people consider speed reading. Now, the funny thing is that really what most people do, like your entrepreneurs that supposedly read every fucking book by XYZ personality who really means nothing, is they read the introduction and the last chapter. But they'll tell you they read the whole goddamn thing.
Wow. I mean, that's better than what I thought they did, which was read the Wikipedia page or Spark Notes.
Oh, there's certainly plenty of that too. Yeah. But I mean, that's my point, is that there really is, I don't think there really is such a thing as speed reading a book to completion, like as a whole.
Yeah, like if you were to ask somebody detailed questions about the book, I don't think they would be able to answer them. Or
Right.
even like comprehension of very complex ideas being presented.
Yeah.
I feel like that takes a hit too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's something like with Audible books, I think you can kind of pull off a trick where you just listen for the important information and you let a lot of other stuff kind of just flutter in the breeze, you know, and I suppose that's somewhat similar, but then I would never like claim that to be any kind of speed reading of any kind. That's more you hunting for what you're looking for in what you're listening to. That's a very different situation. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because something that I've kind of learned while listening to Audible books at higher speeds, which is something that you encourage me to do because apparently you listen to everything at 2.5x.
Around there, yeah.
So, like, initially I bumped up the speed that I was listening to things to 1.5, and over time I adapted to where I could hear it and it sounded like it was normal speed and I could
Right.
comprehend what was going on and remember everything. Then I tried moving up even faster to 2x, and as much as I tried, I just couldn't get the same level of comprehension out of that as I could with the 1.5. So I think there's a limit to how fast you can push things before you really start suffering the information absorption.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a book that's very detail oriented and I'm really trying to soak it in, I can't do 2.5. Like I will definitely scale it down to 2 and below. If it's,
Sometimes I listen to books at 1x.
yeah, sure. Well, hey, how about it? You know, but yeah, I mean, there's some books where, yeah, 2.5 is fine, you know, but often those really are the books where I'm basically just looking for the high notes, you know.
So you're doing the speed reading of the audio world.
Yeah, but the thing is that a lot of modern books, even fiction, is all kind of BS anyway. Like you don't even need the whole book. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think it's a bad thing. You know, we could get sidetracked into an entire conversation around this, and it's one that doesn't need to be had right now. But bottom line being, the good old fashioned way, there's no such thing really as speed reading. Like I don't think that exists. And I'm sure somebody's going to email me, because we get reactions sometimes from these book clubs. In fact, I got some nasty emails because some people were very offended by the recommendation of The Courage to be Disliked.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah. Oh, they did not they went and read it even. And they did not like the fact that like this whole idea that there isn't trauma. Oh, triggered. I mean, they didn't like that at all.
Oh, well, that is a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in Adlerian psychology that's very difficult to swallow, you know, no doubt. But regardless, so I mean, you know, people do react to these things, and I'm sure somebody's going to say, "Oh no, there's this guy, he can speed read and he can actually repeat it all back to you and all this stuff." Well, okay, so maybe there's some genetic freaks out there, and I say that with respect.
Geniuses.
Yeah, great, you know, but for like, if you want to talk about people on average, I mean, and even that runs into a problem. No, speed reading doesn't exist. There's no tricks to that sort of thing. I mean, give me a break. So anyway, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, thank you for sharing that feedback about The Courage to Be Disliked. I didn't realize that people were actually triggered by that or offended.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in circles that Sovryn Tech as a show has been a part of in the past. And, certainly large chunks. This show has an audience in the 5 digits, in the thousands and thousands. There's a lot of different circles that it runs in, but in some of those circles, there's big business behind trauma. There's people making their life's blood, making their money and everything off of dealing with other people's traumas. And so I'm not surprised, quite frankly. I knew that statement was going to be shocking. I didn't say it for shock. The only reason I listened to the book is because you recommended it. It wasn't because I am looking to disprove the concept of trauma.
Well, even when I read that, at first I was triggered, but then I took a moment to think about it and actually hear out his argument.
Yeah.
Listening to the whole book really helps.
Yeah.
But I understood where he was coming from. And whether you agree with it or not, I would hope that people actually hear what is trying to be said, and not just, react.
Yeah, they're books with, and I'm always careful about, and I was critical of this with the book, that the first book ends with, it's simple, right? That's basically what it says at the very end. I'm like, oh, no, don't say that. Nothing's simple. Not like that. But they are very simple. Simple is an okay term to use. They are practical solutions and concepts. And you usually can't make money off of practical, simple solutions to things. Another book series or another author we've talked about often when we do our little book club here at the beginning of an episode when you're on, is Dr. Michael Greger. He hammers it home over and over again in How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, every single book, that the reason you are not being told by a doctor to do X, Y, Z is because they can't make money off of it.
Right.
And this is the reality. And this is just as true in psychology, psychiatry, therapy, go down the list of your, it's true almost in every industry. And boy, I could go on a whole tear about profit motive, but I'm not going to right now. So I'm not surprised, because there's people who their bread and butter, again, relies upon the notion, the concept of trauma, and that people need to get fixed. And well, there it is. What do you got?
I'm just surprised. I didn't know that there were people looking to profit from it that were responding to that show. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah. They did not dig. And this is par for the course. For me, I always bring up wacky ass shit, and
you get lots of haters.
Yeah. And this is part of a lot of the things that we talk about, especially even just during the book club part that you and I do. The power just went out for a second there. I think we're okay. Anyway, and in fact, I do this often. In fact, somebody, you were there when I received it. Somebody sent a book scanner to me off of my Amazon wish list.
You were overjoyed. You were so happy.
Oh, I was ecstatic, because this is what I do, folks. I go out and find the books, and I scan them, and I make them available for everybody to be able to read as well, that seem to have been lost to time, that might have had, frankly, really solid, brilliant, pertinent information in it that stands up right now. And sometimes I wonder, not that I think there's any kind of grand conspiracy. If there's any conspiracy, it's just stupidity. And as in stupidity is the conspiracy. Okay. Not that I believe anything like that, but I think there's a lot of people who, just engage in cognitive dissonance, much like when they are presented with a argument that claims there's no trauma. Oh, no, you know what I mean? And they won't go on. They can't go on. I have read books recently, talking about the books that I've read, where, I have been stunned at some of the things that they're books that I read. I don't know how much detail I need to go with them, but they're books that I read where I'm reading it and you know, because like I'm rushing into the room or whatever and just going, you know, like with just stunned with this information that I find, where there's things that I think, I mean, personally, I believe everything is a remix. I don't think there's anything really new under the sun. All right. But there are things that I thought I more or less independently, not that others couldn't have come up with it as well, but that I independently came to these conclusions. And then I read a book from 250 years ago, and someone else said it. And you know what? And one of the worst problems is that I think the only reason that no one else ever talks about it or brings up these books or bothers to share these books is because, oh dear, they must have some term in front of their name or some kind of descriptor, you know, that we can't fucking take, you know.
So why don't you talk about these books that you're reading? This is the book club. It's your turn to share which books you're reading. If you're willing to. I know some of them are kind of obscure.
Very obscure, but important. And I think there's a lot to take away from them. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. We can talk about anything, you know, during the book club.
Yeah.
But, well, here, all right, fine. One of the books I've been reading lately is by a guy who is called America's First Anarchist. Now, you'd think
that's a big deal.
Yeah, you would think everybody would be talking about this guy, especially like in some of our circles who are more of a freedom bent or a libertarian bent or an anarchist bent or whatever. Never heard this guy's name uttered fucking once. Never, ever have I heard him uttered once. In fact, a guy whose name I have heard uttered often is a person named Benjamin Tucker. Benjamin Tucker was a very famous American anarchist. And he basically said, this guy, whose name I haven't said yet, is the guy that started it all. This guy was, you know, pre-everybody. Like, he was the man. How? Especially, yeah, and you know, we've run in these similar circles, you and I, Ellen. We've been to these events. We've been in places, and you've seen them, where there's tables full of all these books about, you know, economic theory and anarchism and you know, individual freedom and all this.
Oh,
all this
sure.
kind of stuff.
We've rubbed shoulders with all the anarchists, the libertarians, of the voluntarists, hundreds and hundreds of people.
We really have over the years. I mean, rub shoulders is putting it mildly.
Well, sometimes we're rubbing more than just shoulders.
Well, those are stories for other times. But how do these names not come up? How does a name like Gustav Landauer not come up? How does a name like Josiah Warren, who is specifically who I'm talking about, how does that name not come up? And I'll admit this. So I've been reading this guy. There's a person a few years ago. They put together a collection, and I don't mean like that they did this in 2015, and so we were out of circles, and so we didn't know, and nobody else knew. No. This was done in the early aughts that this book came out. It's called "The Practical Anarchist: The Writings of Josiah Warren." Now, I don't agree with everything. And I mean, I don't think anybody should agree with anybody 100% necessarily. You know. I don't agree with everything that Josiah Warren lays out, but I'm reading this shit and I'm going, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. You know, like, I mean, he like his concept of that freedom, personal freedom, comes down to one thing. How many options do you have? It's all about options. It's all about choices. You know, you do not have don't have this grand master plan of what a stateless society looks like and all this stuff. Everybody's going to enact it differently, and you let it happen organically. You just have to create the framework where they have the most choice. They have the most options. This is what I've been saying for a fucking decade on this show, right? And nobody, you know, I never hear anybody else talk like that. I never hear it come up ever again. You know, it just doesn't happen. And I thought, well, I'm like, I guess I'm the person carrying this banner. No one else is bothering to write or say this or anything along those lines. And then I find out, no, 200 years ago in the 1820s, this guy, you know, this little American dude out of Boston was laying it all out long before. And anarchists at the time knew it. there are a lot of other things within this. This book is fucking amazing, and it proves a point that there's a couple points that it proves. One, I'm not exactly comfortable in laying out just now because I don't know how much everybody's ready for it. But one of the points that it brings up, see, he existed before there was a left-right paradigm in the United States. And his writings basically show that anarchism eventually gets trapped in that left-right paradigm. Even though it claims to be outside of it, it ends up getting trapped. And you can, of course, see it today with anarcho-communists versus anarcho-capitalists and all this stuff. There is an anarchism that exists outside of that entire concept. And Josiah Warren, and I would argue there's others, Max Stirner, go down the list of them, who they exist outside of it. Another point that it brings up is that it proves, like, the term socialism before the 1950s, there's no set definition. In fact, that word means basically nothing. All it means is like dealing with society. It has nothing to do with communism or any of this other stuff. But fucking A. I mean, I'm just waiting. After I release this episode, I'm just waiting for my questions@sovereigntech.com, folks. I'm just waiting for my email or my Twitter to blow up with people saying, "Oh no, the socialists are," and I mean, people are just going to be slobbering, and foaming at the mouth just at hearing that word. Look, the word means nothing back in the day. It means jack shit, But then, like the other guy I mentioned, Gustav Landauer, this guy's genius. I'm reading it, and he puts so many disparate elements together that I thought I had somewhat, at least rarely, done. No, he was doing it 150 years ago. He was so far ahead of the curve, but nobody will read him. You know why? Because when they go to look him up on Wikipedia, it's going to say he was a utopian socialist. Oh, geez. What is the definition of a utopian socialist? There is no definition. People just kind of lumped these people into these terms. Nobody knows what these terms mean. Landauer says socialist. What does he mean by socialist? You look it up. You have no fucking clue because, again, it didn't mean anything. It meant a billion things. It was just a term that got tossed around. Just like anarchism for a lot of people means many different things, right? And if I sound impassioned about this,
very,
it's because I feel like, I don't want to say I feel lied to, but I feel like a lot of, these writers who should have been explored, were purposely not, even within anarchist circles. And probably because what they're saying, either you can't make money off of it, or it doesn't fit into whatever agenda that you have, whatever it is. And it just, it pisses me off. It pisses me off so bad.
So can you share with us, like, one sentiment that either one of these people that you just mentioned says that makes them unappealing to the larger populace, but you think they got right on?
I don't think there's anything that would be unappealing other than, like, again, you can't really. All right, so Josiah Warren, and this is something that I think he was right on. In fact, I think he was 200 years ahead of the internet. Okay, let's bring it back to tech a little bit. He was adamant that everybody should be able to be a self-publisher. In the 1800s, he was saying this, and he was fighting for it. This was like part of his activism, as it were, kind of like how Lysander Spooner was big about, making the Pony Express, right? An alternative mail system. This guy was all about, basically, he was doing create space, in the 1820s, and he was wanting everybody to be on board with, okay, no, everybody should be able to publish their own books. Everybody should be able to self-publish. I mean, this is basically, he's arguing for bloggers, again, 200 years ago. And the problem with that is you can't make money off of that. No, we want to go through the publishing house. No, or you either can't make money or you can't control the narrative. I don't think the average person would see that as wrong, because basically that's what everybody does on the internet today anyway, right? But I think that there are a lot of people, including in like libertarian spaces and others, that I think they might have a little bit of a problem with that. You know, I shouldn't necessarily say that, but anyway, I know that that's something that people wouldn't necessarily get excited about or whatever. I mean, or even just having like the largest amount of options, letting things organically become whatever they are. No, most libertarians don't want that, because they immediately say, if anybody even tried communism, we're going to have to stop them. You know, we have to shoot these people. And or we have to dump them out of helicopters because, you know, which is horseshit, you know, but Josiah Warren was basically saying, yeah, let people practice whatever, you know, style of living they want to practice. Take your pick. There's so much more that I could get into that. This conversation went far deeper than I planned on it going.
Email your questions, people, or send a voicemail.
And yeah, I can't remember the number. Anyway, and I tried pulling it up and it wouldn't come up. And you know what's terrible is that so many of these people are so brain dead that now just because I'm reading a socialist author, I'm going to get called a socialist. And that's fucking ridiculous. In fact, Josiah Warren, like he talks against what would be called capitalism, but then he's fervently anti-communist. But that's the other problem that people can't get into. They can't see that the opposite of a market, not that he was anti-market, but like that they immediately have to think, oh no, the only opposite to the market is communism. That's crap. Not at all. Like that's in what universe would that be remotely true? That that's it. There's only two options, you know, but people, their brains are just going to shut off. And I mean, all you have to do is go to Twitter and, you know, go like on, I don't know, some libertarian idiots, you know, that has some kind of following and look at his Twitter feed and you're going to see it. The instant somebody says something about, yeah, toss a communist out of a helicopter, you know, or somebody like tries to say, yeah, you know, maybe we don't necessarily want to do that. I mean, you're just going to see the heat come down and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting to look at. When that happens, but people refuse to look at these books. And I think not that it's a conspiracy necessarily, but I don't think that if it doesn't fit with the message you're trying to get out there, they want to ignore it, even though it is part and parcel and core to the history of ideological concepts that they claim to espouse. So anyway, drives me nuts. And when I read this stuff and it's like, wait a minute, somebody should have told me about this book years ago and nobody did. And I just, that makes me livid, you know, that happens. And there's other big stuff in there too, but I'm not going to go down that road because that'll turn into massive conversations, scientific ones, in fact. But conversations for another time.
Well, look at the good you're doing right now. You're telling people about these obscure books that you wish you had known about for years.
Yeah.
You're saving people lots of time.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I do this. And that's why actually I like doing the book club with you because, you know, there's so much shit out there. I think people, you know, want to hear from a couple of, dare I say, intelligent folk. You know, yeah, what are you guys reading? You know, what do you got coming down? And we're not just intelligent, but we're unconventional. Incredibly unconventional.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's putting it very mildly. And so I think people know they're going to get something unique, you know, when they listen to, when they care to listen to, you know, what we're ingesting as far as books go. So anyway, there's a lot of other books I'm reading, but I think I've said enough. So if you want to have a good time, check out some Josiah Warren and Gustav Landauer. I also recommend him. And you know what? Get over yourself when you read these things, because it's one of those times where it's good to have an open mind and glean from it what is useful to you, which is a great thing to do anytime that you're reading, especially nonfiction. But anyway.
Especially when you're reading something that's challenging for you because it goes against something you believe.
Yeah. And challenge yourself, for fuck's sake. I challenge myself all the time. I mean, literally all the time.
That's how you build your brain muscles.
Yes. And part of the reason I do it is that I don't want to be right about a lot of things that I think, like I want to be proven wrong. It's like, no, please show me that everybody isn't a fucking moron, please, and well, that one hasn't been proven wrong yet, but I'm trying to prove that wrong. So,
well, it's also really stimulating to be outside of your own mind and your own thoughts and to share in someone else's for a while, like a radically different point of view.
Absolutely. Well, but see, you're great about this. You've been doing this to me for years, ever since we've been friends. I'll never forget it. We're what was that place? Gauchos?
Oh, yeah.
We're at Gauchos. Okay.
It's a restaurant. It's a Brazilian restaurant that serves meat on sticks.
Yeah.
And I have been a vegetarian/vegan for over a decade now. So
right.
The entire time that we've been friends.
Yeah.
So you could imagine my discomfort at this restaurant while sticks of raw meat were being carried around and carved.
You're an absolute fish out of water in the situation. But I remember you were saying to me, it's like, you ever think about reading something other than science fiction? And I was like, no. Why the fuck would I do that? And anyway, you challenged me. You said, well, try. I was like, okay, fine. I trust you. You give me a book to read. You tell me. And I remember the book you told me to read. I read it and I was blown away.
Which book was it?
Well, at that time, it was still kind of science fiction, but it was This Perfect Day.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Tremendous
that's more
read.
Of like dystopia.
Yeah. But tremendous read. I would have never picked it up. Would have never read that. I'm so glad I did. In fact, it's an important book right now in the world we live in. It's even more important than it was back when it came out. What, in the 70s or 1980s, something like that. But you've pushed that a lot on me. You're like, no, get out of the zone, get out of your zone and read something different.
Yeah. Get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Once in a while, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to start reading Danielle Steele or anything, but,
well, I would never suggest you do.
or any Judith Krantz. We're not going to do any of that. But regardless, it's been only a good thing, to kind of break out. But I mean, I've always been unorthodox anyway, so there's not, but regardless, you have definitely inspired that. And I think we should put the challenge to all of these Sovereign Tech listeners. Break out of your comfort zone. Read something that you think is absolutely preposterous. Go ahead and take the time. And if anything, it'll get your mind doing some calisthenics, as you go along. So what do you got?
You're right. It is an exercise. You learn how to strengthen your opinions and your perspectives by doing stuff like that. So I think it's only a good thing to really challenge yourself to read things that you might even hate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's far more important now also since we read most things online and we have 20 billion algorithms that think they know what we want to read. And they are controlling what we should be seeing, and they are constantly schlepping that, upon us. And it's good to break away from that too.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing. Confuse the algorithm.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, throw that the fuck off. It's like, wait, he's reading Danielle Steele? Wait, what do we recommend to him now? Like, 5 minutes ago, he was reading Taken by the T-Rex. Now he's reading Danielle Steele. What the fuck is this? Yeah, I mean, confuse those fuckers to no end, by all means, Anyway, so, okay, that was a great book club. We went a good 37 minutes or so into the episode just talking about that. And we have great stories that we need to get into and talk about. Yes. All right. So did you have anything else you wanted to bring up? Or are you good?
No, I think I'm good with the book club. We can bring that one to a close.
Yeah.
We'll just put the marker in those pages and come back to it later.
That's right. The advertisers are not going to like that, but that's okay. I never let them hold me down either. And they know that. So
that's right.
So let's talk a little. I mentioned at the top, we need to get into some tech news here. I mentioned at the top that I wanted to talk a little bit about Twitter. So now, Ellen, are you on Twitter?
No, I'm not.
What do you mean? You're not?
I have no Twitter accounts.
You're 25, right?
Yes, and even when I was 21, I never had a Twitter account.
You are not following the plan. You are supposed to be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
No.
It's going to get banned by Trump anyway. No, supposedly. Yeah. Anyway, that's a story for another time. But don't you realize that you do not compute? You understand? You are supposed to be on Twitter sharing sharing what you had for breakfast. What'd you have for breakfast?
Please like me, people. Look at my pretty face. Aren't I likable? Oh, look, I said something quippy. Please give me a heart.
I love it. Yeah. So anyway, turns out Twitter is in a bit of trouble. And then
really?
Yeah.
Wait, does this have anything to do with the story that we talked about last time I was on?
It's actually, it's related, but only as a byproduct. It's not part of the Twitter hack, but I think the Twitter hack created such a stir with Twitter within Twitter and with its investors and everything, that now Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, I think he thinks now he can start putting some extreme ideas on the table. And so let me ask you this, Ellen, as somebody who I guess doesn't buy into the notion that you have to be on Instagram, you have to be on Facebook, you have to be on all this.
Oh God, no. The people that I want to be connected to, I am.
Right.
I don't need those social media platforms to stay in contact with the people I care about.
So if a company like, say, Twitter came to you and said that they want you to pay for a subscription service, okay, to their platform, to their social media platform, and you won't see any ads anymore, would you do it?
Fuck no.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I mean, I can think of one service that I did pay a premium for monthly to stop getting ads, but it was for music.
Oh, yeah, that'd be Pandora. I
yes,
would assume.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't need social media. I mean, if anything, they should be paying me because they already have a bunch of my information.
Now, this is really going to, I mean, the advertisers aren't going to know what to do with this. I mean, what are we talking? We have 20-year-olds that aren't, or people in their 20s who aren't interested in social media. What kind? Talk about genetic freaks.
You know what? I think people who are even younger than me aren't into it.
I agree.
If anything, they're using like Snapchat and TikTok, which I don't know that those are platforms the same way that Facebook and Twitter are.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right on that. In fact, I covered this in a recent story on Sovryn Tech, that The Intercept put out about basically the Pentagon is freaking out that, oh shit. In fact, the title of the episode is Z-Bellion, as in Generation Z, because they're scared to death. Generation Z doesn't want to share all of their information. They don't want to be info whores, and just like, and
good for them.
I agree. Yeah. And they're just not interested in that at all. And I think, and I talked about it the whole time, I think that's absolutely fantastic that that's what's going on. But I mean, so what's happening is, the reason that I bring this up is that Twitter is not making money off of their ad platform. Facebook, it's a different story. Facebook is doing fairly well with their ad platform, but Twitter is not making money in this way. I think ultimately this points at something that I've brought up many times, is that a lot of the people on Twitter, everybody's so concerned about what people think on Twitter and, which way the Twitter tide is going, or the waves are going. But And I say this with empathy, and I mean it. I say this with empathy. I mean, most of these people who spend all their day on Twitter, they can spend all their day on Twitter because frankly, they're poor. And like, they're not doing anything else. Like, this is what they do, like they're not. And again, I don't mean to say that disparagingly, because there are economic forces that are not under their, that are being, shall we say, thrusted upon them, that are very unfortunate.
But at the same time, people do determine their own fate in the sense that they can choose how to spend their time.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. But, I mean, this is part of the problem with social media, right? Is that it gives you the illusion that you're doing something. There is an illusion that you're living. There is an illusion that you've created a change. There is an illusion that, and this is going to rub some rhubarbs, there is the illusion that your opinion matters. And I hate to break it to you. Okay. to quote my old friend, my old dear departed friend, you know, your opinion does not have, people want to say all the time that, you have a right to your opinion. Harlan Ellison would say, no, you have a right to an informed opinion. And just go on Twitter for a few minutes and you're going to see a lot of people don't have very informed opinions by any stretch of the imagination. But also, woohoo, you typed out something on a little fucking screen. It's not like you're out there. I mean, there are people out there marching right now, but it's not like, you're not putting your life on the line. You're not doing all these different things. I mean, again, it is very much an illusion. Of course, that's the truth for much of the internet. So,
but it's an addictive illusion because
yes,
it makes you feel like people like you and listen to you. Sure.
It's just like, a game at the casino, it's just like, pulling down the big handle, right, on the slot machine and so on. It gives you, and they hired the people that made the slot machines to make you feel good about what you're doing on these, on these platforms. Why you would pay for that privilege? I cannot imagine, why that would happen. But basically, and this is something I've said on the show for years, sooner or later, like the piper is going to have to get paid with these platforms. Everybody expects all of this stuff to be completely for free. Now, none of it is actually free. It's usually making money off of your data. The data being sold is either getting bought by governments or being considered valuable by advertisers. And then the advertisers for whatever company, give Twitter or pick your platform the money, right, to advertise on that platform. Problem is that now you have these companies saying, well, shit, we're not getting any ROI out of this, and so why are we going to advertise on Twitter if we're not getting any ROI? Now, there's a lot of us. In fact, there's a book from, 7 years ago called Social Media is Bullshit. It's a great book. And the guy in that basically said, he's like, you're all eventually going to figure it out that these numbers that Facebook and Twitter and other people are giving you aren't adding up to money in your wallet at all. There's no value in it. And now that's becoming true. And I think Jack Dorsey coming out and saying, hey, we're toying with the idea of having a subscription model for Twitter is proving the point that all the stuff that you thought was for free, now, no, it was never free. And now, these companies got to make money. And once that happens, there's a lot of platforms that I think are basically going to die because these people, and again, I say it respectfully, okay, these people can't afford it. They can't afford it. They can't pay for it. Unless it's going to be, even if it's an infinitesimal sum, I don't think they're going to do it because you basically have to, you think about Netflix, right? Of course, you and I, we hate Netflix. But you think about Netflix, what is it? 10, 15 bucks a month, somewhere in that range. I know they raise their prices over time. Look at the amount of shit you have to make as Netflix to make that a viable proposition to a consumer. Just 15 bucks. You have to spend billions to make that. Now it scales, yes, but you have to spend billions of dollars on content, movies, shows, all that, comedy specials, whatever, to make it worthwhile to a consumer for them to want to buy into what you're doing. I'm sorry, Facebook, Twitter, and all these other things, they don't have that value prop. And I think Facebook might be looking at this too. That's why they're doing like Facebook Watch, because they know they have to basically produce what Netflix does to make, say for a subscription model with Facebook for that to become viable and possible. But like you, you came right out and said, and you being in your 20s, okay, came out and said, no, I'm not going to pay for this shit. Well, and that's not even getting to the fact that you're basically paying for your own surveillance.
But I'm one of those freaks that just doesn't need approval from anyone, and I really don't care about it.
You are a beautiful, beautiful freak.
Thank you.
And I mean that in every way.
I take that as a very high compliment.
But I can't help but wonder if there aren't... Now, there's no one else like you. Like I said when I introed you, you are incomparable. But I can't, and there's not a but. I do wonder how many more there are like you. When that Zebellion story came out, I think that was the government sweating this, that there are other people like you, Ellen, that are not interested in being all over the place and sharing every little bit of information on these platforms, and also not willing to pay for it because their surveillance models rely upon Facebook, Twitter, and whatever else, and people just not giving a shit about their privacy, and people just not caring. But you care, and I wonder how many others do. And so, that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about it with you on, because I wanted there to be they can say to me, well, Brian Sovryn, you're just, you're a 39-year-old curmudgeon. You're old school, you're out of date, you're this, you're just complaining because things aren't like they were when you were 25, blah, blah, blah. I wanted somebody on that, they can't make that criticism of,
Well, I find it surprising that there's even as many people using Facebook and Twitter as there are now, considering some of the revelations that have happened about these companies over the last decade even.
Right.
Like Facebook doing unauthorized experiments on people, for example.
Sure.
That freaked me out.
Right.
I stopped using Facebook after that.
Yeah.
And like the complete lack of security that has been shown to be present. With
the Twitter hack.
Well, with Twitter, yeah, and with Facebook.
Right.
So I think these things, like some of these revelations have happened often enough that people have really started to get the message, or at least like young people who are receptive to these messages really hear it. I think people who are around my age, maybe a little bit older, they still really love using Facebook because it's a way to stay in touch with people that you care about. And, you don't have to make a new account somewhere else. It's not like the MySpace situation where suddenly everyone's shifting over to Twitter, which that did happen with some people, but the vast majority of people still have Facebook accounts. So there's no reason to leave for a lot of these people, and they don't want to. But I guess for younger people like me, or even younger, there are plenty of other ways to stay in touch.
Yeah. And I think, shifting to where it's not like the fire hose of people, like Twitter or even Facebook is, where it's more personal, like a Telegram group and things like this. I feel like that's like a little more of a direction to go. But yeah,
that's definitely more tolerable.
Right.
You don't get exhausted by the amount of people that are commenting or talking to you.
Yes. And of course, I've been saying this for years on this show, but the other thing too is that there is really an ideological war going on now between Twitter and Facebook, where Twitter is willing to fact check, the slapnuts in chief, right? That idiot in the White House. And then Facebook says, no, we're not going to do that. But, and then you have people who are like, oh yeah, well then I'll be on Twitter and I won't be on Facebook. But really it's Pepsi and Coca-Cola. You're still drinking shit. Right? Like, yeah. It's still garbage going into, not down your throat, but at least in your mind. And that's the part that bothers me, is that they don't realize it. It's like, no, infrastructurally, these platforms create these problems, or have these problems, etc. Kind of like what you talked about and others, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I saw something recently that I thought was really funny, where Zuckerberg was being represented in a comedy skit, and it was taking place in hell. And like the devil had called Zuckerberg down to like do business.
That's why he wears all that sunblock.
Yeah.
Did you see that picture of him surfing and wearing the sunblock? No, it's hilarious. His face, he is white as a sheet, doesn't even begin to describe it. It looks like he's what was the android in Alien? Ash.
Oh, yes.
Remember the one that gets its head bashed off and is leaking this white stuff all over the place? He looks like the android with like all the white stuff just like gurgling out of his mouth. That's how much sunblock this guy has on. It's insane. And he's on an electric surfboard. Anyway, go ahead.
Gotta protect from skin cancer.
Right. Yeah. Or, the fires forever. Of hell. Exactly. And so, all right. So Zuckerberg's in hell. I like this already. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep going. So
anyway, there's a person visiting hell and they're like, wait, Zuckerberg, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I don't teach other people evil. I just provide the platform that spreads it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's how people view Facebook. But essentially, Twitter does the same thing. It's just that they're willing to fact check famous people's sayings or whatever it is. I guess if anybody has like enough clout in the public,
Right.
and they say something and people want them to be fact checked, then they're willing to do it. But Facebook just won't do that under any circumstances. But either way, you're getting misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, it still turns, again, fuck Trump. Like, if anybody thinks what I'm about to say is somehow supportive of him, not at all. I mean, we just had a 20-minute conversation about anarchism. If you don't get the picture yet, I don't know what I can do for you. But still, that fact-checking ultimately becomes a political tool.
Exactly. I feel like so much facts or whatever are being driven by the media, and I guess there are other agendas at play. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to know what the actual truth of a lot of these things are.
Yeah. I mean, and Zuckerberg, don't think that he's like somehow being ideologically pure or anything like that. No, and I think I might have talked about this on the show when this was first happening, but the only reason he's not fact-checking is because, once he wants to run for office, some kind of office, president or otherwise, I mean, he's going to have to get the Constitution amended to allow androids to get voted in. But I'm sorry, that's offensive to androids. I would not insult androids by suggesting that Zuckerberg is one of them. But regardless, that's all he's really, I mean, that's why he doesn't want to do it, because he doesn't want to get basically tripped up by his own algorithm that he's going to implement, or by his own system of fact checking that he would have to implement. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, subscription model, is it a good, I mean, let's bring it back to that. Go ahead. Okay.
Well, if you really need to use Twitter for some reason, like if you're an influencer and that's actually your job, which I don't know if anybody actually has a job like that, but it would be worth it. Like if there's no way that you're leaving Twitter, but you want to have that experience of no ads blasting you throughout the day, sure, that'd be worth it.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically where I fall on it, is that if this is a thing for you, I mean, yes, I would rather pay for something than get ads.
Yeah, right.
All day long. Like that's just the reality. I don't know how much exactly I'd be willing to pay for that, but yes, I would. If it
was like $5 a month to not have the constant annoyance of something trying to, be sold to you, yeah, that's worth it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I get it. It's not a bad idea. It's something that basically has to happen. And this is happening. I think there's a reason Firefox is looking into creating premium accounts that you pay for, where you get a bunch of features and everything. It's because the internet is maturing. Not people haven't matured, obviously, as you see when you see what they say on the internet, but the internet is maturing to the point that it's realizing, it's almost self-actualizing, nothing's free. And that somebody's got to start paying for all this server space. and it's going to get offset onto the user. Or at least that's very much the way that it's looking. So I'm not surprised this is getting touted. I can't picture, other than, and I've, toyed with this notion, I don't want it to happen, but other than the government basically turning it into a literal public works, and thus it becomes government funded, I don't think they have any other real option to make money, as a platform. But then also, I think once they do that, it's probably going to die, because people aren't going to pay for it. I mean, they're not, I don't think people are going to see the value add in that. So certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on. It's pretty interesting. But I think Ellen Sovryn basically just told everybody, get the fuck off of social media. Is that how that went?
Yeah. I mean, say your goodbyes, find other ways of connecting.
Right.
Social media is not doing you any favors.
Woo. I love it. All right. We'll be right back with some more Sovereign Tech. Great note to end on. Hey, is Sovereign Tech not enough for you? Well, let me tell you about something you'll never get enough of. No, I mean it. We're talking about a radio show and podcast that goes all night long, 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night, 365 days a year, and has been going since the early aughts, baby. I am talking about none other than Free Talk Live. It's the show you control. That's right. It's an open phones call-in show that is ready for you. And if you're worried that your voice isn't going to get heard, don't be. We are talking about the only libertarian radio show stateside. And not only that, it's also the number 26 talk show in the United States. Start listening now and go ahead and hit that massive back catalog at freetalklive.com. The Golden Stallion guarantees a good time, and you might even find some episodes with me on them when you do. That's freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
The main story.
You know what I feel like doing, Ellen?
What do you feel like doing, Brian?
I feel like making stickers with like the American flag on it. You know, those ones that say I voted?
Yeah.
And just have it say I tweeted, because it's just as effective.
You're right.
Or should I say just as ineffective?
I thought you were going to say I farted.
Well, yeah.
You know, it'd be about the same.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you might as well tweet that. I farted, you know? What the hell? And watch it get 20 billion likes. Anyway, we need to get off of that subject. But I mean, I've been wrestling pretty hard lately with like, okay, you know what? Do we just end the Twitter account? Do we put a stop to that? Because the security issues, I mean, that's just off the wall.
That's got you scared?
Well, not scared, but concerned. And like the constant, like now they're saying, oh, there was a 17-year-old kid from Florida who did it all and all this crap. And it all just seems like horseshit. Like Twitter's just lying across the board about whatever happened.
I like the skepticism. This is good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and of course I did a whole episode about it recently, or not a whole episode, but I mean, it was a good chunk of the conversation. And I mean, my point is that, you know, it doesn't matter what the answer is. And in fact, you were on when we first talked about it. Yeah, that was an episode that you were on, and I had said the same thing then, that it doesn't matter what their answer is, nothing is good enough.
But I could have never predicted the strangeness of the reality of what their response actually was.
Sure, 17-year-old kid in Florida. Okay. But anyway.
Yeah, or that it was social engineering.
Yeah, right.
You know, I was really hoping that it wasn't an employee getting paid off, because like one would want to trust in the employees working at companies like that, because they really do have power. They have real power over people's lives. Right. You know, and you'd hope that they would use it fairly. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it sounds like they just, you know, they used people's information against them.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing good about it, because it reveals all the cracks.
Yeah, and like people are still people. They still want personal gains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've been heavily debating, like, you know, do we end it? Do we put a stop to Twitter? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I mean, as in, like, should I just like not bother?
Well, I've tried very hard to refrain from commenting on what I think about your Twitter use. Yeah. I know that when you first decided to create your Twitter for purposes of, you know, interacting with your audience. Sovryn Tech community. Sure. Your audience on Twitter. It was a really challenging decision for you to do that. But you decided you wanted to, and I'm trying not to say anything about it because, well, you know my personal feelings.
Well, you're not on it. I mean, that says it all. You know, it was... Right. Yeah.
But it's not for me to say what's right for you to do, because it's not my show. Right. As much as I might be like creative director or whatever, or inspiration. Sure. You know, it's not my decision to make.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't know. Anyway, it's something I'm still wrestling with, you know, because I mean, my ultimate logic was, well, I've got to be somewhere, you know, and I've had people who, you know, I've had people who are advisors that have, you know, basically talked about this and whatever. Not that I need the show to grow. I mean, it'll do that organically. It already has, far beyond what I ever expected. I mean, I didn't expect this show. I thought maybe I'd have 100 listeners, at best. Like, okay, yeah, maybe 100. Yeah, maybe one day it'll be like 500 or
when
something.
you first started it?
When I first started it. That's what I thought. But then, no, it turns into practically 20,000. And, granted, when you do something so long, I mean, people have a certain appreciation for it, I guess. But, yeah, I don't know. That's why I say it'll grow organically. I don't know how much Twitter or any social media ever helped in getting this show to where it's at. People got to find out about it, but then I don't even know what that secret sauce is. Most of the time, what I've seen, it's been just people talking to each other, or, however that takes shape, or somebody playing it at work or something like that. I don't really hear where, wow, yeah, I found out about this on social media and away I went.
Unless you're doing really aggressive advertising, which I don't think you would do something
that's
like
not my
that.
style. No, I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to trick people. I'm not going to do bullshit thumbnails of me looking like an idiot and pointing at something with a red circle around it or anything like that, like on fucking YouTube. I don't buy followers. I don't do any of that horseshit. And I absolutely refuse, because then it'd be far worse than, gee, should I be on Twitter because all of these platforms are totally insecure? Then it turns into, wow, this guy's a complete hypocrite in everything he says, when you go that distance. But anyway, when it comes down to what's real and what's not, why don't we shift gears? This is a conversation I've wanted to have with you for some time. And the reason I want to have it with you specifically, Ellen, is that the technology we're going to talk about, we're going to get into some fun stuff with dinosaurs here in a minute. All right.
Yeah.
In a few minutes. Yeah, it'll be great. We'll end it off with fun stuff. This technology that we're going to talk about is ultimately, I think, the effects of it, the ramifications of it, really come down to people like you.
This conversation is not going to be fun for me. It's going to be very challenging.
Sure. And, because if you want me to edit this out, I will. Okay. But I mean, I want to express this, and why this is important. Okay. Because now as we go, so what we're going to talk about is deepfakes. Okay. Now, as the story that's linked in the show notes for this episode makes abundantly clear, 96% of deepfakes, which is basically, using an algorithm, or, deepfakes is deep learning and fakes, basically using software to overlay someone's appearance over another body. 96% of this is used for pornography. It's used for porn. And that's part of why I say this ultimately would affect people like you. And so again, I'll edit this if you want, but
you mean porn stars?
Yeah. Maybe for me,
people who are not porn stars.
Yeah. You are conventionally a stunning woman. Like, I mean, that's a fact.
It depends on your definition of conventional.
Well, I mean, I think it goes far beyond conventional, but I mean,
appreciate it. Thanks.
I've even, I've heard other women basically say, like, describe you as, like, even women, not just guys. I already know the horseshit guys say, but, universally hot. That was a term that I've heard used about you. Okay.
I'm flattered.
Sure. And so, that's what I mean. Like, this is the kind of technology that would be used to bring someone's, say, fantasies about someone like you to some degree to life. Okay. The first time I had heard about deepfakes was years ago. It was like 2017. And someone had overlaid Daisy Ridley's face as Rey from Star Wars onto a porn star in a video. Okay. Just a face onto a body that looked kind of like what you might imagine Daisy Ridley's body looks like. I saw this. You can tell that it's fake. Certainly in 2017, you were able to. And it doesn't match up with the audio at all. Like, that's a whole other trick to do, but not impossible. And the software that allows this to be done, there's open source software out there that's solely free that anybody can use and take advantage of. So this is Pandora's box opened. Okay. And to understand, what I have linked in the show notes is a Forbes article titled "Deep Fakes Are Going to Wreak Havoc on Society. We Are Not Prepared." Yeah, so that's when I first encountered it, and I instantly, in fact, it's interesting. Star Trek basically called that this was going to happen. Do you remember the episode of Deep Space Nine where a particular client of Quark's for the holosuites, which is the Deep Space Nine version of the holodeck from TNG, where he wanted a holosuite program that had Major Kira in it.
Oh, yes. I vividly remember this.
Right. And so Quark is spending the whole episode needing to get like this full body scan of Major Kira, and he's trying to trick her into getting it. And it has a very funny ending and all this stuff. But basically, that's deep fakes. Okay, where this guy wanted to go into a holographically generated environment, and there would be a holographically generated Major Kira that he would be able to, do whatever the fuck he wanted to do with, obviously sex among other things. Okay.
And she was very freaked out by this whole idea and refused.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it. Like within the context of the episode, I completely understand. With the episode, there are problems because it's like, wait, you're telling me there isn't enough camera footage around for Quark to already, make a hologram of Major Kira come out. Of course there is.
Well, you would think that kind of technology exists, but
right.
One never knows. I mean, a 3D scan is very different than a 2D scan.
That's true. I mean, maybe he needed to use a scanner that could even get the dimples or so, I don't know, whatever. Okay. So certainly I understand that. But basically they had already dealt with this. And all you really had going against it in the episode was Major Kira's, thinking that it was very imprudent, rude, and violating. Okay. To do that.
Yeah, she felt that it essentially violated her privacy and her ownership of herself. Right.
Now, this gets into a big conversation because, as has been stated on Sovryn Tech over the years, you don't own the photons that hit your face. Right. Now, that's getting into a very scientific realm of, what is actually the image of a person anyway? Right.
Sure.
And that gets into a very metaphysical conversation, I think. That goes far deeper than most people probably want to go when it comes to deep fakes. Basically, what people want to do right now is just outlaw this stuff. But again, the software is open source. It's out there. It's free. You can't outlaw this. You can't keep it from happening. You can't keep it from getting posted on the internet. Are people going to do absolutely horrendous shit with deep fakes? Absolutely. Like is terrible stuff. Getting into child stuff, just horrible, disgusting, deplorable. Absolutely, that is going to happen. And I hate the fact that there are people out there that think that way. And I'm sure those are going to be the first use cases to try and make this illegal, because it's a bit of it's true, but also a canard that gets tossed out anytime, won't you think of the children, right? That always gets bantied out about that. People are getting kind of wise to that argument, saying, yes, we do think about them. That doesn't mean you have to make a law. We'll handle this or whatever. But that's a whole other conversation. I guess I really want to ask the very broad question. Let's just get to it. We understand what deep fakes are. Okay. Again, it's video, someone getting overlaid and being faked in a video as being XYZ, How would you feel if you went to, if you found out someone shared it with you or something, that somebody made a deepfake video of you, like overlaid you on some porn star's body or something like that. Let me also be clear. You are no prude. Like, you are the farthest.
Well, I can certainly be sexually expressive when I want to be.
Yeah.
When I feel the situation is right.
Exactly. Yes. So before anybody thinks, oh, she's this good Christian gal or something like that. No. No. So anyway, but how would you feel about this?
Well, I would watch the video very closely.
Uh-huh.
I would do whatever it took to find who created this video, and I would find them.
Whoa.
And hurt them.
Oh, woo, violence. Right.
Well, that's what I would want to do anyway.
Yeah, right.
That's how I would feel about it. Obviously, I would feel revolted and betrayed and offended. I did not agree to this. That's not a voluntary use of my image.
Right.
And I would never be in a porn video anyway. And hopefully the people that know me know that. And I guess that kind of feeds my belief that the fewer images you have of yourself on the internet, the better off you are.
Right.
I mean, it makes you much less vulnerable to this sort of thing. But anyway, essentially, I would just feel not good about it. Not good.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a great point, and that is that really in the surveillance society that we live in, anybody could do this to basically anybody right now, I think. We're just about, I mean, when you look at Clearview AI and some of these other companies out there that just scrape every image out there that they can find of people, it's very, very difficult, I would think, to somehow not, for your likeness, to not be available for this kind of use today. That doesn't make it right. I'm just saying that you raise a great point, and that's, I mean, and it's worthwhile. I think what you said is it's a worthwhile thing to try and thwart this sort of thing. So, I mean, you watched a deep fake video, right? Did you watch one of Obama?
Yes. Yeah. It was one that was talked about in the article that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. It was a video of Obama saying curse word. Yeah. He was talking about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And then as the video came to a close, it showed the screen split, and then it showed the person who is doing the voice of Obama, and you could tell that he was actually talking, saying what the Obama face was saying.
Right.
And then you could, if you looked at Obama's mouth, you could tell, there's something not right about that. It looks kind of CGI.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet. Most of them you can tell either it's in the way that they're blinking or things like this. The technology is just not there to where I think you can be reasonably convinced. Or, I mean, maybe cursory you could be convinced that it's whoever they're purporting it to be, even though it's a deep fake. But we're really not there yet. Will we ever get there? Maybe. I'm far more concerned about the audio technology as far as this goes, not so much the video technology as far as that goes. And the audio version of deep fakes exists. I mean, we know that.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good, and it doesn't need much to make you basically sound like you said just about anything. I mean, the overarching point that this article is getting into is that we're not going to be able to believe anything we see online.
Yeah, and maybe that's the takeaway message.
Right.
Is if you see something online, you should certainly question the origins of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. You should do some, I don't know, some deep research instead of deep fakes. Do some deep research on the matter. Unfortunately, most people won't even go past the headline, and that's just with, a run of the mill story of any kind. Why would we expect them to even begin to question whether or not something is a deep fake?
Well, that's why I always hope there are people out there I don't know if you ever watch shows like CSI.
Sure.
But there was always an expert that could watch a video and analyze it and tell you if it was faked.
Right.
And I'm hoping there are people like that out in the world that are willing to do that good work and point out whenever a video is faked. But that's really, I feel like that's our only hope, unless there's some sort of algorithm that can detect algorithms.
Yeah, you'd really, there'd have to be somewhat of an arms race where, yes, there is software that can basically deconstruct any video and say, no, this is, a deep fake, whatever it looks for to necessarily make that happen. I don't know. There's a bit of a conversation to be had on this. It is not uninteresting, nor is it unimportant. that 96% of the deep fakes on the internet right now, again, are porn. There is an old argument. It's a little simplistic, a little too simplistic, and because there's never just one reason. But I think there is some merit and there's some truth to it. And that is that porn basically forwards all technology, or that sex ultimately forwards, any advancement. Really, in for humanity, if you want to go that far, or at the very least, civilization.
I guess so. I mean, the vast majority of the internet, I believe, is being used for porn, right? Like, that's the old trope. Isn't there enough out there in the world? Like, why do we need more?
Well, that gets into another point. But I think that, like, the desire to prove whether or not something is real, I don't think there's the same impetus, or at least not yet. And there certainly won't be the open source impetus. And that runs into a whole other problem where I think that, okay, someone might develop the algorithm or the tech or the software that can detect if something is a deepfake. But I think that will always belong to some company. And they will basically become the gatekeepers of quote unquote truth when it comes to deepfakes. And that's a problem. As to where with creating a deepfake, again, that box is opened up. Anybody can do that now with the degree of efficacy.
There was a part in this article that mentioned some pretty important reasons why I think people would be motivated to find the truth about deepfakes. For example, if you're any person with influence, there could be a video out there of you saying something that's like really terrible or that causes problems for other people. Somebody could make a deep fake of President Trump saying that we're going to war with North Korea. And, some people might see that and think it's real. Right. And that could actually cause panic and problems. Yeah. Especially if you're, someone who is influential in North Korea.
Well, and it doesn't help that if I heard that Trump said that, I'd believe it. It doesn't help that he's insane. But anyway, continue.
No, you're right. It's just these videos, these deep fakes do have the potential to cause real damage. So I think, for like the society at large, it is a problem that needs to be solved, or at least one that needs to be investigated. Yeah. I think there is impetus to do so, especially when it gets into the extremes like you brought up. I mean, war with North Korea or whatever else. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And when it's something that serious, I think people will jump on it. I think we'll probably do that deep research, right? Like I said, I think where it's going to be run into an issue, and I feel bad. Oh, do I feel bad for so many people? Because people have insecurities and other things that, or self-esteem issues and other stuff that I really understand. This could really be used as a blackmailing tool. This could be used, especially with social media, add in social media, and all you have to do is make a video of somebody that you really want to not fuck, but fuck with. And I could see people committing suicide over this, because a video of them got uploaded. It's a fake, but a video got uploaded to them, and even though it's a fake, the consequences still occur of somebody getting shamed over it or whatever else. I don't think making laws around this stuff is going to help anything, obviously. I don't think laws ever help. They always do more harm than good. But I think one of the things we've really got to resolve with this, or that perhaps needs to change, and I want to know what you think about this, Ellen. The cultural mores around sex have to change. Like, it has to stop being like a shamed thing. It has to stop being like this, like stuff that's supposed to be done under the cover of night, or behind 20 closed doors and under 7 sheets. That attitude's got to go away, because I think that's ultimately where this is going to, really affect a lot of people, is that there is this. This is why I wanted you on, because it's such a challenging conversation, right? Yeah, you're right. I think it is important, and this is kind of an entirely separate topic, but the shame that people have around sex, I think it goes really deep. It's ingrained in Americans, at least, their entire lives, as something that's like shameful and disgusting.
Right.
And you never talk to people about it. And if you do, it's like your best friends, and you tell them, like, hoping that they're never going to talk about it to your parents or siblings or, people that you care about. And like, if someone who is in your family finds out that you're having sex, usually that's not a good thing.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe other people have different experiences, but I think that's the vast majority of experiences. Like, when I was in high school, I had so many friends that, like, I knew were having sex, but when I'd ask them, they would say, no, of course not.
Right.
Like, they didn't even want to admit to it. And to be honest, for years, even after high school, I had shame about sex, and I didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't want to express it. Because, like, women are given so many conflicting messages about it. Like, you're supposed to be really sexy, but then if you are, you're a whore.
Right.
And you don't want to be that. So you're right. There's like very complicated issues surrounding shame in sex. So I guess it's important for people personally to forgive themselves and forget about that shame and move forward in an empowered way. But it's also important for other people who care about them to realize that they're humans, and that's a major part of their humanity, and it's normal, just like anything else. But I guess there was something else I wanted to say before we got into the conversation about shame with deep fakes.
Right.
And, maybe there really is no solution to this, except for people being more educated about the fact that these exist, and that it's possible that any video they see could be a fake.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't believe anything I see online anyway. Actually, part of this show's MO is calling bullshit on what's online. Like that's what we do. This is nothing. See, this is the thing for me, is that deep fakes, people are talking about it or treating it like it's something new. It's not really anything new. And that's why I think the problems are very old, but, or like the core of the issues, the core of the problems are very old. When I was in the 90s, when I was a teenager and the dial-up modem would start up and everything, and I wouldn't even be on the internet. I'd go on a BBS, on a bulletin board system, right? There were tons of photoshopped pictures where someone would take Pamela Anderson or Sonny's, head and put it onto a nude body, right? And often enough, they'd be black and white to kind of hide where the little Photoshop job was done and everything. But that's essentially the same thing, right? Granted, deepfakes is on a more, you could argue, a visceral level, I suppose. Okay, but ultimately, it's kind of the same thing. In fact, where does it? And I'm asking these questions, and if you have answers, like please, share them. Like, where is this different than someone who? I can only imagine, and I know because I've done this myself, who writes fiction, and where they base it upon an actress or they base it upon a person they know, and it's like erotica or something like that.
Well, I think it's different because it'd be like you writing fiction about someone, but saying they actually did this. It's not fiction.
Right.
And I think that's the difference, is that this is skewing the lines of reality.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the photoshopped image is still kind of the same, but what you just mentioned is absolutely fair, right? And again, maybe it is that visceralness of that is an action you are watching happen, and it activates more of your senses.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a video is much more interactive and engaging to your senses than a picture is.
Right.
And the technology is so good that it's like hard to tell if it's like that photoshopped image.
Right. Yeah. I feel like this is a massive conversation because I don't know, like, again, making, say, a deep fake, like when I first saw the first one with Daisy Ridley, like where do you draw the line between that and say the porn parody made of The Force Awakens, right? It's coming from the same spot, is that someone wants to see an erotic version of a Star Wars movie. Like, you could argue that like the impetus for making such a video, say with a deepfake in one case, in the other case having a actress with a likeness to Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, but nobody believes that the actress that looks like Daisy Ridley is actually Daisy Ridley.
Well, okay, that's a great point. That is a great point to bring up.
And besides, Daisy Ridley in Star Wars is playing a character. That's not the person Daisy Ridley. Right,
but then you see, yeah, but that's what I feel like. It's like, where do you draw the line, on that? This is very, like, this. I'll admit it. This is challenging even for me. I get where you're coming from when I asked you, like, how would you feel if this was done to you? You didn't like it.
I just feel like it's a matter of respect. If you respect a person, respect that they agreed to have their picture taken or be in a video of a certain content, but they didn't agree to be part of your porn.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could come out and just say, look, man, if you've got to make a video like that, what the fuck? Like, make your life a fucking porn movie, all right? If you're that hot about it, but you can't because, well, anyway, I could get into some expletives. But, I mean, I could start insulting people. So
yeah,
I don't necessarily want to go down that road.
What kind of accomplishment is it really to make a video like that?
Yeah.
It's not, people.
Right. I mean, I'll admit, like myself, so I have created fiction where the characters are based on real people. Admittedly, I asked every single one of those people, hey, I'm writing this. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, but the readers don't know that. And you provide...
Oh, I think so. I think a lot of them do, though, with mine. I think a lot of them do.
But you're not providing as much information in the written word as you are with videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. The point I'm making is that, there's a respectful way to go about, say, creating that kind of, or creating content based on another person.
Oh,
and this ain't it. Like, deep fakes ain't it. That's sort of the point that I'm making here.
Yes.
With as far as that goes. And I mean, this article wasn't even really worried about the pornography part. I think, the personal level is where we have much deeper problems. It's very simple to solve the big scale or the larger scale issue of how does this affect society. Just don't believe what you fucking see on the internet without doing any like real research. The personal level is I think also where I'm a little more concerned as far as this goes. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any simple solution to this, even on the large scale. I think the title is absolutely right and that we're not ready for this because you can tell yourself all you want that I'm not going to believe anything I see on the internet.
Right.
But the vast majority of us, if we see something that's like shocking or something that feeds into a certain bias we have, we're going to buy into it right away.
Yeah. Yeah. You're still going to have that initial reaction, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
It takes serious effort to make yourself question and be reasonable about everything that you see.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're totally right. It really does. And that's why most people aren't, I think, because it does take such effort, especially when you're so inundated today. And that's another problem too, is that, I mean, you just have shit bombarding you all the time. I mean, you get worn out over it. And it's no wonder that some people would probably fall for deep fakes, or they might even think, well, shit, that might actually be Daisy Ridley or whatever. I don't know.
Well, then I hope somebody would ask, hey, Daisy Ridley, were you in this porn?
Yeah, but isn't that kind of crass?
Is this you?
Yeah, right.
Well, no, I don't think it's crass. Uh-huh. I think that if the creator didn't ask Daisy Ridley, I think she would appreciate somebody else asking, is this you? Because then she could actually respond to it.
Yeah. I mean, my final word on it with the more personal level, like say the more pornographic or the potential for using it with pornography. Admittedly, this tool does not interest me at all. I have no desire to use this. And it's not because I'm with the most amazing woman in the world already. It's not necessarily because of that. It's because something I've known for a very long time, there is no video, that there is no technology that can bring to life a lot of the things that are in my head, and I just, no, like, I know people think, well, CGI can do everything. Newsflash. No, it can't. It really cannot illustrate everything that goes on in my mind. And my mind is a far more, shall I say, powerful tool of pleasure than any deep fake software could ever dream, of being. And yeah, I mean, that's what I've got on that. And frankly, this is the part that's going to be a little controversial, but I question the mental health of a lot of people that want to engage in this sort of thing.
Agreed, actually.
Yeah. I mean, because how could you, okay, you want to get with the gal, get with the gal. And if you can't, like, but then you kind of want to force the issue. See, this is where it gets, sorry, I know I said that was my final word, but this is where it gets into, if a woman tells you no, right? And then you go and create a holographic program of her ultimately, or a deep fake of her or something like that. I feel like that gets into some very strange territory.
It is a violation. You're going against her wishes directly.
Yeah, I can really, I'm starting to see that as we talk about this more. I'm starting to see that there's something very off and wrong with the person wanting, I think, to do that.
Yeah, I feel like a person who would do something like that is either vengeful or could potentially be a rapist, or at least somebody who's not agreeable. Somebody who doesn't care about other people. Maybe someone who's a sociopath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I could see all of that. That doesn't mean that it's all necessarily true, but
right.
Those are the tendencies of someone, I think, who would use this kind of technology for that purpose.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
How would you feel if somebody made a porn video with you in it?
See, this is the thing. This is why I wanted you on, because you can't speak for everybody. Okay, not you nor I. And you can't make broad swaths like women do this, men do this, because that's horseshit. But ultimately, I think men don't care, right? And that's because,
What, it wins them cool points?
Not that I mean, you could argue that culturally that occurs. Again, it's a cultural thing. It doesn't have to actually do with being a biological male. Culturally, yeah, I like me, and I've said this for years. Anything that somebody claims is like, oh, I heard Brian Sovryn did this, or I heard Brian Sovryn did this. And I just like, yep, yeah, I did it. I did it all. I did everything, and I mean, because I just don't care. And the reason being is that any time that really I take offense to something like that, like where my life, as long as my life's not on the line or anything like that, ultimately gives another party control over me. It controls my actions, reactions, and my direction. And I won't allow for that. And that's why I've always been a very uncensored person. And I've made sure people know that I'm uncensored, and also why I'm also very vocal about, a lot of my principles, because at the same time, if somebody posted online a deep fake of me, the deep fake I'd be a little more worried about than being in a porn movie would be one of like me snorting coke, or getting drunk or something like that or whatever. But people who know me in real life, and this is the importance of spending time with people in real life, or with, standing up for your principles, no, Brian Sovryn would never do that.
Right.
Like that's not a chance. Like, that's bullshit. That's a fake video. That didn't happen. Okay. He's not David Hasselhoff, throwing up over his kitchen floor, eating a burger off of it. Like that just wouldn't occur. And I love David Hasselhoff. I'm sorry, but it's just an example. Okay. So that there's a solution there as well, in being very vocal in who and what you are. So that people know that that if ever this gets levied against you, that it's crap, Right. But at the same time, like if somebody put up a deep fake of me in like a porn movie or something like that, I mean, I'd I've already had people threaten me in emails, and I've read them on the show. I've already had people threaten me that they claim they have video of me having sex or something like that. And I've written back to these blackmailers. I've written back to them and said, go ahead, put it online. Give me the link so I can put it in my show notes. You know, like, go for it, daddy. You know, like, let's see what you've got. And I know they don't have it, you know, but even if they did, fine. You know, like, I just, again, you can't let people control you like that. And I think that's kind of the point I was getting to earlier. The problem is that for a guy, that's very easy. Okay. Because dick is abundant and low value. Right. And so,
yeah, and there's also this weird cultural acceptance of guys just being studs and, you know, getting out there and putting their dick in as many holes as possible.
Right. Guy's stud, woman's a slut, right? Like
exactly.
That's the double standard. And
if women did that, they'd get shamed.
Right. That's why as deep fakes have been on my radar for years. I haven't talked about it on the show because no, I want a woman on the show, someone that this is actually going to affect. Right. And you know, that's why I wanted to have you on to talk about it. And I'm glad you did, because beforehand I was a little devil may care about this whole sort of thing. Wow. But now a little.
Really?
No, I mean, I respect how people want to be, you know, seen, presented, and treated. Okay. But this conversation has really, because I mean, I used to be of that, or I was of that camp, and in some ways still am, of, you know, you don't own the photons that hit your face. But just having this conversation with you has really helped me realize, no, there's something very fucked up about the person that wants to even engage in this. You know, like where, you know, you got turned down by that woman. Okay. But then you want to force your horse shit into your life. And so, you know, you're going to engage in using deep fakes or whatever else, or you're going to do all this. And I think there is something not clicking in that brain when they engage in that. And again, that's why I wanted to have you on to have this conversation, because I knew something like that was going to come to light.
Yeah, it's just incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah.
And it could actually be damaging to someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tool. Again, this is a tool that I think could be a very real problem. Yeah, guys don't have on the line what women have on the line with this. You know, and I always knew that.
And I'm not saying that I personally have anything on the line. Like, if a deepfake video of me showed up out there, I don't think that too much in my life would change. I mean, there are certainly there are pictures of me online that I wanted not attached to me.
Yeah.
For various reasons, mostly professional. But you know, I've changed my appearance enough over the years that it kind of doesn't look like me anymore.
Sure. Fair.
But I think there are people out there who do have a lot to lose, or could be very hurt by something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess I always want to, like, plead with people, like, just be respectful, be kind, you know, to your fellow humans. Do the right thing. Don't abuse the powers that you have if you're using this sort of software.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people have talked about, like, the same technology that powers deepfakes, how that can be used to really, like, you know, create interesting multimedia with completely new people, right? Meaning not based off of someone else's face, not based off of you or Daisy Ridley or whatever.
It's like a composite person.
Yeah.
Made out of like 20 different people's characteristics. Yes.
Something like that. People have talked about, like, that there are positive uses for that as far as, say, entertainment or other things. And I hear that, and that does get into interesting, you know, I could see where there could be some positive uses. So I don't want to take any action against this technology, but I do want people to bulwark in their minds the nature, the ramifications of it. You know, that, like, that's all I'm going for. And I really have a problem with this. I'm not gonna like, you know, ban the software. Obviously, I don't even have that power if I wanted to, even if I wanted to, you know, but I'm really starting. I don't mean to psychologize people necessarily, but I got to go there. I have very serious questions about people that want to engage in this sort of thing. And boy, do I wonder, and again, obviously I'm no prude either. I am not. I've worked in the porn industry. Like, I mean, I've been there. Okay. Like I know how that score goes. Of course, there's a reason I don't bother with it anymore either, because I know that that's not the healthiest environment either. But so, you can't levy that on me either. But my point is that, yeah, boy, this raises some very deep problems, I think. Do you have any other thoughts on this, Ellen?
Yeah, well, there's a part of me that feels glad that you're starting to question the mental health of anybody who uses the software, because they use the software for the purpose of creating like a deep fake porn with someone. Because I do think that that's a serious problem. And it can only be for blackmail or because they feel that they don't have a chance with this person. So they're using their image without their permission. And it just, it hurts to know that anybody would do something like that. But, there's other uses for this, like you said, that could be benign. So I guess I'm kind of in the same camp as you, where I'm aware that this could be a scary thing, but I'm also not totally against it because it does have some uses that could be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I've talked about, what was it? There was a chat app that a guy made where he basically programmed his dead father into it. Okay.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. This is some years ago that I talked about this. And I felt, and I more or less was, that got into deep fake territory after a fashion in that, basically saying that, and I've appreciated, like in Star Wars Rogue One, where you had the likeness of Alexander Cushing, playing Governor Tarkin again. Or you had Carrie Fisher playing being a very young, and this is in The Rise of Skywalker as well, where she's a younger Leia, right? And of course, she's even gone. And Rise of Skywalker even drove my point home that I made in that episode. And basically I was saying is that I think it's disrespectful to the person when you try to recreate who and what they are, in that way. And it's not the same,
It's not true to their memory.
Right. Just like I wouldn't want audio versions of deep fakes used for me. Like if someone wanted, we have an idea of what Brian would say about this. And so we're going to make Sovereign Tech into perpetuity, even if he's not, gone or even if he's gone or something like that. No, that's not me. and that's the bottom line is it's not me. Don't disrespect me by, making me do things that I didn't do. And then that, I think that hits at this too. It's the same thing.
Yes.
It's disrespectful to the person to have them engage in something that, that they didn't really do, and to try and like present them to the world as, here they are. When no, that's not them.
Yeah. And I think you have probably heard this hundreds of times from your dear friend, Harlan Ellison.
Yes.
Not that he was involved in deep fakes or anything, but he was a stickler about his writing.
Yes.
The thing that he didn't want more than anything else was for his writing to be changed.
Right.
It had to be true to what he wrote. And
Yes.
he would kill to keep it that way.
Yes. In fact, I think I played that audio recently on an episode where he was talking about that with Tom Snyder. And yeah, he said, how did he, it was so beautiful. He said, you could burn the American flag for all I care. He's like, you touch my writing though, and you are dead. It's like, I have no patriotism, only to myself. And like, that was his whole point. And that was so beautiful of him to say, that's brilliant of you to bring up, Ellen. And that's really it. Like, don't misrepresent me.
Yes.
And that's what this is doing.
People who have a strong sense of identity. They
Right.
don't want this sort of thing to happen. And like, for even people who are questionable about, maybe their identity is changing, but they still want to have control and ownership over it.
Right.
Because it's really the only thing that you have control over.
Yeah, and this isn't arguing for IP. Before anybody thinks that, like, they think we're arguing for intellectual property or something like that. No, this is just about respecting other people. It's that simple. In fact, Harlan would bring this up, like with Disney, right? Disney never gave credit to the authors of all those, fantastic animated movies that they would make. They were based on original works by people either hundreds of years ago or whatever else. They would never, ever, ever give them the credit. Harlan hated that, and rightfully so. Like, give credit where it's fucking due. I mean, my influences, I wear them on my sleeve. And I want people to know when I'm referencing somebody else, or when, I lifted an idea, because everything's a remix. I said that at the top of the show, and it's still true. Okay. But
you know what? I think essentially the reason that you do that is because you love and care about people.
Yes.
Because you're a good, kind person, and you're sane.
Believe it or not, folks.
And there are people out there who don't do that because they don't care about other people.
Yeah.
They don't want other people to get the credit, or they just don't care about the consequences to other people. But I think giving that respect to people is kind of a side effect, or like an emergent property of being a loving person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm so glad I had you on for this. I knew we'd get to something that other people aren't talking about. And I guarantee us what we've talked about has not been laid out. I haven't seen it in a single article. I mean, other than, yes, respect the person, or whatever, but I don't think anybody went this distance with it. And you're absolutely brilliant in bringing all of that to fore. I don't have anything else really to say on it, but that's it. This is, I think you got to question the mentality of someone that even wants to do this. I could go other places. We could get into Instagram filters and, and other stuff that I have all kinds of issues with, because also I don't want people themselves to be fake, in front of the world. I want people to be honest.
Well, I think that's something we should talk about at some point too, because that is a big conversation, and that actually, it's just huge. And there's so many different aspects to it.
Yeah. That's a whole other conversation. All right. We're going to table that, but it's going to stay on the table. We're going to have that conversation at some point.
Instagram filters,
Snapchat filters, whatever else I want to talk about these. That's a conversation that has to happen. Anyway.
And it's going to bring in one of my favorite topics too, which is makeup.
Woo! All right. Oh man. Yeah. All right. I am writing this down in the show, in my my template notes to make sure that we talk about this. This is going to be dynamite. All right. So anyway, we'll table that for now. We'll take a little break. We'll come back and we'll talk about something a little more fun. How about that?
Okay. Yeah.
We'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovryntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
The Golden Stallion doing whatever he wants to do. The Climax.
It is time for, we'll call it the Climax. How about that? Where we get to talk about whatever we want to talk about. And what has happened often, Ellen, when you've been on the show lately, is we end up talking about aliens. And we're not going to do that.
What?
I know, but we are going to talk about dinosaurs, which is a favorite subject of a lot of people, quite frankly, but certainly a top subject of yours and mine.
Oh, certainly, especially when I was 5 years old.
Hell yeah.
But that interest never went away.
Right, same here. In fact, is it still on the side of your desk? There should be an Indoraptor over there.
Yeah, if it's climbing up the side of my desk.
Yeah. Of course, from the latest Jurassic Park movie. But anyway, speaking of raptors, you shared a story with me, which played very well into another story that we're going to get into. Here, I'll read the headline. It's from Sci News. Paleontologists find fossil of 70 million year old polar raptor. Paleontologists have uncovered the fossilized jawbone of a juvenile raptor.
Dromaeosauridae.
Okay, we'll go with raptor. Dinosaur that lived. That's basically what that means. That lived 70 million years ago in what is now northern Alaska. Raptors is a group of small to medium-sized feathered predatory dinosaurs that flourished in the Cretaceous period. These dinosaurs lived all over the world, but their bones are often small and delicate and rarely preserved well in the fossil record, complicating efforts to understand the paths they took as they dispersed between continents. North American raptors are thought to trace their origins to Asia, and Alaska would have been a key region for the dispersal of their ancestors. The new fossil is a tantalizing clue toward understanding what kinds of raptors, it actually says dromaeosaurs, but inhabited this crucial region. Quote, there are places where dinosaur fossils are so common that a scrap of bone in most cases cannot really add anything scientifically informative anymore, end quote, said lead author Dr. Elfio Alessandro Chiarenza, a paleontologist at the Imperial College London. Quote, this is not the case with this Alaskan specimen, end quote. Quote, even with such an incomplete jaw fragment, we are not only able to work out the evolutionary relationships of this dinosaur, but also to picture something more on the biology of these animals, ultimately gaining more information on the ancient Arctic ecosystem, end quote. So what was going on with this story that like really highlighted it for you? There's more. This is an amazing find, no doubt, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really impressed by this article because I think maybe not for the paleontologists themselves, but for people who read about these paleontologist findings, there's kind of this idea that we've got it for the most part worked out. Like all the details are fit into these neat and ordered theories about how things evolved and where they came from. And like for me, for my sort of like schema of how the world came to be, I never pictured raptors living in the polar regions.
Right.
You know, like they're supposed to be in warmer regions, at least from what I've learned my entire life. But it's just amazing. Like, this is not the case. They were really adaptable and able to live in all sorts of different environments.
And I know the story talks about it, but this fossil basically shows that, now the idea that dinosaurs evolved into birds, of course, I would argue that maybe they also evolved into some other things, but that's a completely different subject, maybe something for a user podcast. The idea that they evolved into birds. Now, like birds, I think a lot of archaeologists or a lot of, the people that research dinosaurs in general, I know that that's actually a broad scope, that they want to apply this notion that dinosaurs are also migratory, right? Much like birds are. But this fossil is actually showing, no, they probably lived in Alaska year round, or lived in the Arctic year round. That's pretty remarkable. What do you got?
Yeah, no, you're right. It takes a lot of fortitude for species to survive in the polar regions.
Right.
You think about the animals that are living there now. Granted, the environment was different back then than it is now, but when you hear polar, it is necessarily like one of the coldest places on the planet because it's on the pole.
Yeah.
So even if the world was overall warmer or had more oxygen back then, it's still, an extreme environment, all things considered.
Yeah, there's a guy, and he was both respected and then would later get attacked, who was a professor, an archaeologist, a bunch of things. Charles Hapgood was this guy's name. He's a contemporary. He wasn't like from, 200 years ago or anything. And he had a theory that there was a dramatic polar shift millions of years ago, or thousands. I mean, like, you know, that basically the Earth as we know it, like, changed really, really dramatically, really fast due to this polar shift. And it raised a lot of questions of, you know, what was the temperature originally like in Antarctica before this polar shift occurred and everything. And I kind of feel like, I'm not going to go into Charles Hapgood's theories here necessarily, but I feel like this might be this polar raptor, this concept, and especially that they were there year round, might shed some, might give some credence to Charles Hapgood's ideas that a lot of people would argue have been discredited. So I found that part of this really interesting. But looking at like the polar raptor, or the, you know, renditions, should I say, of mock-ups of what the polar raptor probably looked like, you get the sense they kind of look like chickens in a way, don't you think? I mean,
maybe
there's a bit of likeness. You can see the bird aspects,
well,
right?
I appreciate that in this illustration they drew these raptors with feathers.
Yes.
And you can definitely see that in their arms or wings and their tails. Yeah, there's a lot of feathery detail. So
sure.
I think a lot of people are running with this idea now that dinosaurs did evolve into chickens or other birds.
Into birds, yeah. Well, interesting thing. So this is a story that I've had kind of saved for a little bit. It originally ran in 2015. It recently got republished. Of course, nothing's really been done with it as far as I know, but it's from entrepreneur.com of all things. And here's the headline: scientists say they can recreate living dinosaurs within the next few years. And I think these kind of play into each other. And so let me read a little bit of this. Don't we already know how the movie is going to end? In a potentially terrifying case of life-imitating art, the renowned paleontologist who served as the inspiration for Jurassic Park protagonist Dr. Alan Grant is spearheading genetic research that could engineer dinosaurs back into existence within the next 5 to 10 years, he says. Now, grant you, this is done in 2015. It's 5 years later. Hasn't happened. But
well, there might be good cause for that, but let's finish reading the story.
Sure. While Dr. Jack Horner, who has consulted on all 4 Jurassic films, initially believed the key to recreating the prehistoric creatures lay in working with ancient DNA strands, further study about DNA degradation over time has ruled out that possibility.
Haha, there it is.
Right, that's why it's not happening.
Yeah, because they couldn't get any viable DNA from any of the dinosaur bones that they found.
Right. It was a good theory, Michael Crichton, but not happening.
Right.
Yeah, so while reading on, instead, a group of scientists at Harvard and Yale have turned their eye to, wait for it, the modern-day chicken. Quote, of course, birds are dinosaurs, Horner told People magazine, so we just need to fix them so they look a little more like a dinosaur, end quote. In an attempt to reverse evolution, the team has already made significant strides in mutating chickens back to the very creatures from which they descended. If that wasn't enough genetic splicing and dicing, Harvard scientists attempted a similar feat recently by inserting the genes of a woolly mammoth into elephants in order to recreate the extinct beasts. Whoa, baby. If the 4 major differences between dinosaurs and birds are their tails, arms, hands, and mouths, Horner and team have already flipped certain genetic switches in chicken embryos to reverse engineer a bird's beak into a dinosaur-like snout. Quote, actually, the wings and hands are not as difficult, end quote, Horner said, adding that a Chickensoraus, as he calls the creation, is well on its way to becoming reality. Quote, the tail is the biggest project, but on the other hand, we have been able to do some things recently that have given us hope that it won't take too long, end quote. So that's basically the story. I mean, I'm asking you, as a scientist, I mean, how do you feel about this?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that, like, based on what I know, and this is the kind of field that I could potentially be working in someday.
Because you're in...
bioengineering.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so this is something that could potentially be done, and I'm sure people have heard about this, but there's this theory that as an embryo is developing, it goes through stages of development that kind of mimic the evolutionary development of the being. I mean, like, even human embryos, for a very brief period while they're developing, develop gills because, you know, at some point in our evolution, we came from fish.
Kind of like how dolphins have phalanges in their fins.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do believe that it's possible for chickens to be reverted to a previous stage of evolution because the DNA as it evolved, it was added to or mutated, but the essential basis of what a dinosaur is still in a bird's DNA. Mm-hmm. You just need to modify it enough to make it look like what it previously was, though there's no guarantee that you'll exactly get it right because, again, mutations have happened, so there's no way to, get it exactly back to what it was unless you had a perfect DNA specimen. So whatever they create, I think it's fair of him to call it a Chickensoraus because it's going to be something different. It's not going to be
a dinosaur. Right.
But it's going to be very much like what a dinosaur would have been like. And, I remember writing a paper about this in ethics class a few years back.
Okay.
There's the ethical question of, is it all right for human embryos to be genetically modified? For example, if you want to make sure that your baby doesn't have certain genetic illnesses, or if you want them to be, stronger or smarter. I just talked about the genetic illnesses. I wasn't talking about, adding abilities, just, taking away some of the bad things.
Sure.
And essentially what I came to at that time was, if we have the ability to do it, why shouldn't we? But, since then, I've kind of reconsidered my stance on that.
Well, that's I'm thinking Jurassic Park this whole time. I mean, that's exactly what Ian Malcolm says in that, it's like we were so busy thinking whether or not we could, we never stopped to think if we should. And yeah, but continue.
Yeah, but I think that's a very important question to ask is this actually a good thing to do? Is it the right thing to do? And it's really important to consider that evolution took billions of years to do what it did. And no changes were that dramatic except maybe extinction level events. But there was no, as far as we know, there is no greater intelligence toying with genetic codes and causing things to happen.
Right.
And we have to be aware that if we do start playing with genes the way that this is happening, we are inevitably going to create a dramatic shift in the natural order. And who knows what's going to happen because of that. There is no way to predict how that's going to it's going to have a sort of domino effect on the rest of the world. You're adding in a new being all of a sudden, and the world doesn't have time to, respond and adapt.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this in the past, like with the woolly mammoth situation that they brought up. I have no problem with the woolly mammoth getting reintroduced because, as best we can tell, the woolly mammoth actually, in fact, at the time, the research I had done had come to basically shown that, okay, the woolly mammoth basically disappeared about 6,000 years ago.
Which is so recent.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's actually even more recent. That there's a chance that, the mastodon or woolly mammoth, in North America, was being hunted in 1700 BCE. That's barely 3,000 years, just over 3,000 years ago. That's far less. And so, I would argue that the ecology, the biosphere has not yet, adapted necessarily. I mean, I guess to some degree it's adapted to the loss of the woolly mammoth.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. There's tons of invasive species now.
But it's a lot different. Oh, and we could have a huge conversation. We had a great conversation last weekend with someone about all of that, about megafauna in North America and everything. And that gets into Randall Carlson's work and so on. But, basically I'm saying the Earth, it hasn't been that long since the Earth hasn't had the woolly mammoth. So if you want to reintroduce it, okay, the Earth can handle that, or the biosphere can handle that. We can handle that.
Well, I don't know if humans could.
Well, humans can't handle anything. But
the Earth could handle it, yes.
Right. But, reintroducing dinosaurs or the Chickensoraus or whatever, that, we're talking about kind of like the polar raptor, right? Where that's 70 million years ago. We're not talking 3,000 to 6,000 years. We're talking millions and millions and millions of years. That's a long time.
Yeah, there's no more niche in the food chain for that animal. It's going to have to force its way into some sort of position in the food chain and in the environment.
Right. So I feel like this is, if you were saying that this is some dangerous territory, I'm with you on that this is some dangerous territory.
Yeah, and even if this Chickensoraus was just being created as like a curiosity at a zoo, or you go to a museum and they have this special show with Chickensauruses and their trainer, what kind of life is that? They don't belong anywhere.
Right.
You're just holding them hostage, and they aren't even able to experience all of the evolutionary drives that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Boy, we could take this conversation some places, because what do you got?
I just feel like it's bad all around. It's great for research purposes, but when it comes to creating new creatures like this, I think that should stay in the realm of video games.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right, I'm going to bring this concept up. It is a fact. It is a scientific fact. It is just a fact. Our brains cannot handle this fact, and I understand that. It is a paradoxical relationship that we have with reality that I think people need to at least accept the paradox. That it is so. When we get into a lot of this gene splicing and everything, I mean, look, in an abstract sense, when you make choices based upon physicality or mental fitness or whatever of who is going to be, say, the father or mother of your child or something along those lines, you are engaging ultimately in somewhat of a genetic program.
Well, selective breeding, but There's nothing wrong with that. That's still allowing for natural evolution to occur.
I mean, there's some artificial selection being done there.
Yes, yeah. I agree that can have negative consequences eventually, but as far as choosing mates goes, as long as that's a choice that you're making because you want to make it, that's just how evolution happens.
Sure. Okay. Right. I mean, desirable traits and so on. I mean, actually, one of the books I didn't bring up earlier that I was reading that is very fascinating is The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris. And this guy, for whatever reason, makes a really big deal about the fact that humans seem to have been selectively bred to have really big cocks.
And really big tits.
Yes, both. Yes, both. And in fact, humanity as a species, and I'm going to get into this, but humanity as a species, like that has been, like, we have the biggest dicks and the biggest tits in the animal kingdom.
Yes.
All right.
We win.
Now I'm gonna say something, but then I'm going to bring up a paradoxical antithetical to this whole thing. Okay, but it is not uninteresting that these are things that have been chosen. Okay, like, I mean, that it is abundant. And Desmond Morris has taken a lot of heat for this. I mean, he's respected in his field, but he has taken a lot of heat for this, for these points. And I think the book, The Naked Ape, is tremendous. It's a fantastic read. But, you got to understand that it seems evolutionarily these were traits that were considered like a good thing. I am not making judgments around that. Okay, Desmond Morris may or may not. But I'm just stating that, okay, that those are traits that have been, where people, looked at that and went with it. Now, I don't necessarily, I bring that up in response to something you had said, but the point that the scientific paradox, the scientific factual paradox that I'm going to bring up is that ultimately there is no such thing as a species. Like, that is a false classification. Literally everything is an individual, is individualistic, is unique. we can't process the universe that way, right? Like that's not possible. What do you got? What do you got? Come on.
That statement makes me a little uncomfortable because while you can say that a species is just a classification, it's a tool that humans use to gain knowledge about something. But it's also a fact that you have to be of the same species in order to reproduce successfully.
Yes. You have to be compatible.
You can have a horse and a donkey give birth to a mule, but it's going to be sterile. It's not going to be able to reproduce on its own.
Can ligers reproduce?
No.
They cannot?
No, they're born sterile as well.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, so a species is... It's a classification, but it's also a real thing in the sense that an animal has to be the same species as its partner in order to reproduce successfully. And I would say that's the definition.
Okay, so it's a measure of compatibility.
Yes.
Okay, but I don't think that's the way people think about species. I agree with you. That's what it should be. Okay.
Well, that's what it factually is.
Right. Okay, but I don't think that's the way like most people think about that. And this has been a very challenging thought for me, as it has come to light for me. Okay, like this has been very, very challenging.
I like the way you put that, a measure of compatibility.
Right. Yeah. So, well, this is something I've been thinking about pretty hard because I think this is a very key concept. In fact, it might be the thing that I was talking about earlier with Josiah Warren. But I won't go back to that. The point that, so, I mean, like there's this idea of, and I get it, like that basically the argument against genetic engineering from an argument of you want the, like you said, the natural order or let evolution take its course, you know, and so on. I understand that. And I've appealed to that myself in the past many times. But I've also always made the caveat that I worry that evolution can basically become God. Like you could replace the word evolution with God and you end up with basically the same result. And that rubs me the wrong way. Right?
I guess, I mean, evolution is something that takes such a long time to occur that we'll never perceive it in a single lifetime.
Yeah. So let me run this through and get, you know, where I'm going with this as far as it relates to the Chickensoraus, because I'm sure everybody's wondering, wait, how does this relate to the Chickensoraus? My concern is that when people are engaging in this kind of action with the Chickensoraus, where they're trying to bring back the dinosaurs, bring back the species, right? My concern is that the way they are thinking is that, well, we can change X, Y, Z in a certain species, like chickens, and turn them into dinosaurs. When that is completely ignoring the idea, or not the idea, what I consider the fact that no two chickens are alike. In fact, you shouldn't even philologically, language-wise, you should not there's chicken 1 and chicken 2. They are two unique creatures. And that's what I mean by that there's no such thing as species. Okay? Yeah, species can measure compatibility, correct. Like what can reproduce and so on, and that's an important point to bring up, I think. But everything is different. Everything is unique, right? But we can't think that way because we would just spend all of our time inventing new names for everything we encounter that we would never be able to like actually think, you know, and process the information. We would never get to where we are now. In fact, even using we is a bit of a problem, isn't it? But do you get where I'm going, what I'm saying with this?
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah.
How about animals that clone themselves? Are those unique?
Like through meiosis? Or like, I mean...
Yeah, budding or asexual reproduction.
It's a great question. Again, this is a challenging thought for me. It's not a new thought. People a couple hundred years ago were covering this, and I know they're not wrong.
They're all individuals, but are they unique creatures if they share the same exact genetics?
Like stem to stern, they are the exact same thing.
Yeah, if there's no sperm meets the egg moment, then it's just an exact clone or
exact
copy.
replication
Yes.
of the genetics.
Although the only difference is like once the daughter separates from the mother, they lead separate lives and have different experiences. That's the only difference.
I'm going to give you the most scientifically accurate response that I can. I don't know, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
And that takes. I don't say that like I'm not saying that in a crass way. I'm raising that point because too many people think they have to come up with an answer on the spot, right?
No, I appreciate that you're honest about it.
Right, and I know you do. And so, but I'm saying that is that because people need to get used to like saying, I don't know, and I'll get back to you on that. That is a beautiful statement to make, and I love it when I hear it from anybody else, and I respect it. So anyway, I don't know, and I'll get back to you on that. But I worry that like when we are playing God, okay, as a lot of people like to use that term when this kind of thing is happening, like with the Chickensoraus. When we are playing God, we are doing so thinking that, well, when I change it in one chicken, this is how it shall be for all chickens for all time. And this is just as much as it is for humans where they want to write out the code for varying cancers or something like that in their DNA, right? I bristle and worry when people are thinking that broadly, because literally every creature, everything is unique. Just like no snowflake is the same, no grain of sand is the same as another. Everything is absolutely unique. I don't have to appeal to the evolutionary argument if I don't want to. The bottom line is that everything is unique. Everything is a mutant from the other. And with that in mind, to try to like create a new species like this at this scale, at this level, this is far beyond hybridizing plants or anything along those lines. This gets back to kind of like we were talking about with deep fakes. I worry about the mindset of this kind of the person that wants to engage in this.
So
go ahead.
What do you think that they're hoping for? Because at the end of the article, it says, we've been able to do some things recently that have given us hope that it won't take too long to create this new Chickensoraus species. So why do you think they're hoping that it won't take too long to create this? Why are they so excited to have a Chickensoraus?
That's another part that I can't answer, and I thought about it too when I read this, was, wait, what's the motive? Like, why are you doing this in the first place? And there's no way it's because they want to make a Jurassic Park. I'm sorry. There's no amount of money that an actual Jurassic Park, like it couldn't make enough money to fund this research. This research must have some other purpose.
And there would be so many people raising their arms up going, no, don't do
right.
it.
Right. There's they are doing this and they're making it sound cool, right? And to many people, maybe it does sound cool. There's some purpose behind this. You can't possibly be making or getting provided the millions of dollars just to bring back the dinosaurs. Like that doesn't gel. That's not a good enough reason. That cannot, like, when you think about the economics of Jurassic Park, again, there's no way it could make the money to fund this research.
You know what this reminds me of?
Mm-hmm.
Last year I was listening to a collection of short stories, sci-fi stories, and there was a story that in the plot was based off of this idea that archaeologists could use this device to go back in time and study ancient creatures in their natural environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they even had the option of bringing them back to their own time, but they couldn't release them outside of this time cone. Otherwise, they would just disappear, vaporize. Yeah. And it became a real business. And the whole plot of the story, actually, that was just like a small part of it. The main story was about bringing back I think it was like a Cro-Magnon or one of the human precursors.
Yeah.
Bringing it to the present and keeping it locked up in one of these time cones. And there was a woman that had to be hired to like be its maid. Anyway, it was really sad because they formed a relationship and she found out like, wow, he's actually really relatable and he's just like any other little boy. He's just ugly.
Right.
But the whole idea of creating a dinosaur again, I think, is sort of like the real counterpart to that short story where like they can't go back in time to study these animals, so they're doing what they actually can do, which is kind of reverse engineering these animals to what their previous evolutionary state was in order to study their behavior that way.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, it's turning back the clock. I don't know. That's my best guess, is that they want to study dinosaur behavior.
Right. Even that, I kind of... Because, like, so this gets into the NASA argument. Like, it's not a bad idea. You know, so NASA's funding, you know, their claim is that, well, the better we understand the rest of the solar system, the better we understand Earth. And that's why NASA's mission is so worthwhile. It's so that we can understand our planet better. Now, that argument is true. It is, we do get to understand the Earth better the more we explore Venus. We do get to understand the Earth better the more we explore Mars. You know, I mean, all of that is completely accurate. But at the same time, that's marketing. NASA's mission and budget is all around surveillance. It's all around getting satellites up there and whatever else, and to point it down on the people on Earth. Like the original concepts behind an American space program. And this isn't stuff from Ancient Aliens. This is from like real documentaries. The whole purpose of the space program was to, beat the Russians, of course, but was really to create a a atmosphere down surveillance system on the planet. That's what it's all about, and so, I mean, it morphed into other things. They found other profitable things to do, as an organization, but ultimately that's where it came from, and that's still at the heart of it, in my opinion. So I don't know, like even if that's true, I still feel like there has to be something else behind it. Like you've got to justify all those research dollars somehow. And I don't know where that can go. But I mean, do you have anything you want to say to that?
I don't know. It sounds like you're kind of implying that they're going to create a Chickensoraus army that they're going to let loose on people at some point when it's useful to them. And nobody's going to know what to do. Not
unironically, that is the plot of Jurassic of Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Like that is the entire plot of it. That's what the Indoraptor that I mentioned earlier was for, was to be a soldier, was to be a programmable soldier. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying I don't know, but more has to, like, they're not just throwing that money at this project without some kind of really high level ROI. And again, a real world Jurassic Park does not provide for that.
Well, if I can just comment briefly, this sort of genetic engineering has actually gotten much cheaper and easier over the last decade.
With CRISPR?
Well, that and other methods
sure.
that might not be as popular as of buzzwords or anything like that. But
right.
The technology to do this sort of genetic engineering has become much more available, much easier to use, much more accessible, cheaper. So it might not be that much of a huge investment, like on the order of billions of dollars or whatever.
Sure.
It might just be a few million per year.
Well, it's a fair counterpoint to bring up, and I'm glad you did. I mean, like that is possible, and I guess I'm open to that. Still doesn't make it a good idea, but at the very least, maybe there's not something nefarious behind it, right?
Right. It might just be a team of really devoted, albeit misguided scientists.
Isn't that how all terrible things happen? No, I'm kidding. No. I'm not speaking ill of scientists, but
well, it's amazing. Actually, I've come to find that there are teams of scientists who are working on projects that I would find horrendous on an ethical framework, but
sure.
The work that they're doing is really incredible. Like they are making smart moves and finding very interesting things.
Right.
And doing things that have previously never been done. So in one sense, it's amazing and I'm impressed. But on the other hand, it's like, why? Don't do that, please.
Yeah, stop. Yeah, I hear that. Well, let's hope for the best. What's his name again? Shit.
Horner.
Yeah, Jack Horner. I know it was Jack. I couldn't think of the last name. Let's hope for the best. And that, I mean, again, I'm not, and I should say, like, I'm not necessarily opposed to genetic engineering, but there are certain abstract concepts that make me feel a little more comfortable when people engage in it. That I think they have like the right ideas about how life works. You know, where I feel a little more comfortable about it. Like there are people who talk about doing genetic engineering on humans to where they are more adaptable to living in outer space. I'm not opposed to this. You know, diversifying, humanity, as it were. Okay. I'm not necessarily, again, opposed to this notion. But then, yeah, I want to see where they're coming from, and I'd love to just have like conversations with these people. So what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And just see if they've got their head screwed on straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, whenever I think about this sort of topic, I think about dogs and how they all descended from wolves, and then you have like pugs and chihuahuas and poodles. And some of them genuinely have problems as they age.
Pugs can't breathe.
Right. Their nasal passages are just too shoved up in their face.
Right.
There are other dogs that like get leg and hip problems very commonly, or have heart problems because they're just too big, or they're just built in a way that they never should have been. And that was selective breeding.
Right.
And while dogs are, they're still essentially wolves, like they're not different species per se. They can all interbreed with each other. Some of them I think never would have evolved naturally, and their lives are going to be shorter than they would have been, or less quality than they would have been if humans hadn't interfered.
Yeah.
That being said, there's nothing wrong with having like 100 different breeds of dogs. And I think we can all appreciate their differences. And, even if you're not a person who loves dogs, you still have to admit, like, some of them are pretty cute.
Sure, absolutely.
And another thing I want to point out is with dogs, we can look at them and appreciate all of the different breeds and varieties. But with humans, it's so much harder.
Yeah.
Why is it so much harder to appreciate the variety in humans?
Yeah. Oh, boy. Talk about the $10 billion question. I know what you mean, and you're raising a great point. And also, I do think it points at our inability to accept uniqueness and differences. We'll bring this a bit full circle. I think Alfred Adler. Oh no, I just lost 20 more listeners.
Yeah.
I think Alfred Adler raises a very interesting concept that humanity we're community builders.
Yes.
Like we're a social species. This is what we do. We do that because it is to make up for our weaknesses. Right?
Yeah, if I have a blind spot, I'd like to have someone around who can see that, or at least see in my blind spot. Yeah,
we're not gazelle that, basically get shit out of our moms and just start running. And like almost full speed, like inside of 30 seconds, suddenly, boom, they're bouncing everywhere. We're not that. We barely even have our brain functioning when we come out. I mean, we form communities to make up for our weaknesses in comparison to other aspects of the animal kingdom of which we are a part.
So you're saying the family is the first community that you belong to?
Yeah, I mean, just by the nature of it, that occurs. And I had a point of where I was going with this, but what were we talking about?
We were talking about how difficult it is for humans
Yes,
to appreciate the variety.
Exactly. So I think that we want to find our we, because we inherently are looking to overcome our weaknesses within our we, within our community. And so I think that's why a lot of people don't want to accept concepts of individuality, uniqueness, and differences, because we are looking for that safety net of the community.
Well, perhaps people feel more emotionally safe with people that they're very similar to, but I think it's so important to embrace differences in people, because they're different. They could have strengths where you have a weakness.
Yeah.
And they have weaknesses where you have strengths. So you can empower each other.
Yeah, and this is where the average person's short-sightedness comes in, is they don't understand the notion of biodiversity. Like, as in having those differences, yes, can complement and can actually go far beyond what you think a community of like individuals, how that eliminates weaknesses. Oh, no. Wait until you get like a bunch of smorgasbord of different types of people. You're going to have a community so strong. Again, that's that biodiversity, or that diversity of interests, division of labor, which is a big part of Adler's, psychology. That comes into play when you have people with different abilities. But it goes down a road that I think ultimately lands at where I was talking about, where really there is no such thing as a species, and that might not be the best way of phrasing that. I appreciate that, with your clarification, but that's not the point. Point being, I think that's the answer why. I think it's because people inherently want a community, and the easiest way to build one is to look for similarities instead of differences. And that is ultimately a pity. It is a shame that we don't understand the importance of biodiversity, and the importance of diversity, and the importance of differences, and the importance of uniqueness and individuality in relationship, perhaps even to the community that we might inherently desire. So, yeah, there we go. I don't think I can add anything else into that. But you raise a great point that, why can't people grasp this, when they see it? And I didn't expect a conversation about the Chickensoraus to go that direction, but there it landed. So
the chicken is landed.
The chicken is. I love it. Anyway, any other thoughts you have on the Chickensoraus?
Well, so many, but it's late. We've been talking for a long time. I think it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, this is another long episode, 2.5 hours. So anyway, Ellen, your brilliance as always shines, even in an audio format, which
Thank you.
Shouldn't be able to shine, but somehow it does.
I know you can't see this, but I'm taking a bow. Tipping my cap.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, yes, we will wrap up this episode of Sovryn Tech, and we'll have you on again far sooner, I think, than anybody will expect. So we will see all of you on the other side.
Thank you for listening to Sovryn Tech, an Osiris One production. Now go out there and make some trouble.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Ce soir, en tête-à-tête avec Brian et Hélène.
What the fuck?
Je suis français.
You're turning me on.